Welcome, welcome. This is second episode of the Breach Report, and we are focusing on law firms this week. And we got a special guest with us, Mr. Jim Harden. Welcome, Jim. Thank you for being a guest here. Just to introduce to everyone who Jim is. Jim is the Director of Information Technology at Tyson and Mendez, and he worked at Stone Brewing before, Infracore, the Cohen Group, personal insurance. So he has a long history in the IT and cybersecurity space, and is just getting more and more experience as he goes. And Tyson Mendez is a very interesting law firm. They were founded in 2002, and they've been around a while, but they have just exploded in growth, especially in the last 2 years. They've done 20% growth year over year on the last 2 years, and now their staff is over 500 people. And so obviously with that comes a lot of cybersecurity challenges. So Jim, welcome, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here and talk some security with you.
Yeah. So real quick, a little bit about yourself. How did you get into the cyberspace? Because obviously it was kind of more IT, and now it's kind of developed.
Yeah, I mean it's there always had some type of flavor of cybersecurity going all the way back to military days. Coming out of the Marine Corps into working straight for the DoD. Obviously security was kind of first and foremost with everything we did there, and then moving into the private sector. As we're coming into more of insurance-based firms, financial firms, and things like that. Obviously, cybersecurity was at the forefront for a lot of those roles that I filled, and then even into Stone Brewing, where we started off as a local San Diego-based company and ended up opening stuff up kind of worldwide. We had to always be security first, focused with stuff going on in like China and Berlin and things like that. So and now Tyson and Mendez, obviously, with the way that the world has changed with COVID, we're a remote first law firm.
Really?
So we have most of our staff is everybody works remote. And then we have several offices around the country that we maintain for if somebody needs an in-person meeting, deposition, things like that. So so security's been a huge deal with that transition for us. We've been taking quite the journey here in the last couple of years.
So you were telling me a little earlier, you were saying that you guys have made like some major headway on kind of your cybersecurity plans, posture, things like that. Like what are some of those things that you guys kind of, since you come to the helm, like what was the state of when it was there, when you came there, where is it at now? What are some of those things that could be lessons learned, like that you're proud of?
Yeah, I mean, predating my arrival here just a little bit, everything was, when the world got turned on its head with the global pandemic, just as everybody else did, it was more along the lines of trying to figure out how to get everybody just to be able to work remotely first and foremost, and then kind of come back and add, additional layers later, which, is that the approach of trying to take that and build in the security along the lines or along the way where people are actually able to other things kind of hindering them or getting in their way, and all the user training that goes along with some of these security layers. It's quite a challenge. So where we've come from here in the last couple of years is we've moved to fully cloud-based, no colo, nothing on site for us, everything infrastructure as a service. Security, from a security perspective, we've put in multiple layers of security at the Microsoft Azure layer, with Sentinel and 24-hour SOC services with partners like Fit, that have been able to help us out there, and really kind of honing in on what our policies and procedures were prior to really moving off site and kind of going into a new realm of how we work. Really focusing on, what our disaster recovery plans are, what our business continuity plans are, really honing in on, instead of, we don't want to have just the check boxes of our test of our plans, right? We really want to be focused in on making sure these things, because, we never know when we're going to have a real life scenario with this stuff. We don't have an office where we can swap out a blade on a server anymore, right? So but all these things that we've been going through with, creating quarter vulnerability scans, making sure we're doing those on a regular basis with our partner with Fit. Our penetration testing, we're doing the annual penetration testing, and coming up with actionable things to really focus on to get those things fixed. And then the ultimate piece to this puzzle, right, is always the end user training, right? So we have a really engaged staff, and we have lots of cybersecurity training going on. And then we test people on that stuff regularly just to make sure, because they're our first and last line of defense. So.
Quick question on that training. So a lot of, the law firms that I've experienced with, which I'm sure is universal, like the lawyers, they want to bill, right? They're billing at a high rate. Billing is critical to the business. They don't want an interruption of any kind, and they don't want to be inconvenienced in any way that would somehow impact that billing. And so a lot of times when you get into these conversations like, hey, we got to train on let's say cybersecurity, it's like, that's 15 minutes I could be billing, right? Like how do you have that? Was that a tough conversation? Was that an easy conversation? How did you get that compliance within, that buy-in, that commitment from the whole firm?
So it's always a challenge, right? And the fact that we have testing through the Know-Before platform, things like that. The conversations are, you don't want to spend 15 minutes doing the training, but if you click on the wrong link, you're going to be incapacitated for days, right? So we want to make sure that they're aware of that. And we didn't want to do just kind of run of the mill cybersecurity training. So a lot of the stuff that when we started falling under other compliances for like HIPAA and CCPA and some of these other things, we got some more engaging training. So it's not just videos that you're watching here and there. And we got some things that are kind of the gamification, and we've got some training that's like these episodic things that Know-Before has done, which sometimes it's cheesy, but hey, people have a tendency to watch it, and because they're kind of funny. So but that's always the greatest challenge, is creating that buy-in. But it's really just continuing to talk to people and let them understand how important that cybersecurity is in that space, right? Because like you said, we don't want to do anything that's going to stop them from being able to bill. So giving real world examples of things that have happened, and like, hey, don't let this happen, or things like that. We really want to make sure that that people, we drive that home. The goal is always 100% compliance. Is that realistic? I mean, probably not, but we do the best that we can. And we have a lot of our senior leadership that helps push and drive compliance. We have good policies for things like that. So
feel through in here that like 15 minutes is easy buy-in. The harder number was when the cybersecurity vendor or insurance wants 2 to 3 hours a year. So what is kind of the cadence that's kind of worked for your firm as far as the amount of training? How much time are you guys doing? Monthly, quarterly, semi-annually? Like what are you what's the strategy you guys have taken in?
Yeah, so we do a monthly training, and it depends on, it ranges on topics from compliance, for HIPAA, or just for general phishing, or for just a wide array of topics, and we do it monthly. and when we do our testing, right, we'll put out a fit our own users and see who clicks the links and all that stuff. And then if that happens, you actually get remedial training to go back and say, well, hey, this is where you failed. You need to complete this training module now. So, yeah, so those are just kind of a few of the things that we use to cover those, like you say, the cyber insurance vendors. And then we also have our carrier partners for various clients that we have that actually have their own requirements for cybersecurity for it to be a partner of ours, right?
Yeah.
And we kind of take that and we look, hey, does it follow within our program? And that's why we made changes like to compliance modules and things like that, because some carriers started requiring that, and it's just good for us to do in general. So
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Are there certain specific departments or employee levels within the organization that, I don't know if you've actually looked at that data, but you're seeing a higher failure rate versus another?
yeah, so a lot of them, like our senior partner attorneys, right? Because I mean, a lot of stuff comes in from all over the place with lawyers, right, from other law firms, and people are sending things via Dropbox or their own little specialty file share or something like that. That's one in particular. And obviously, I mean, our C-suite is targeted. Our senior level IT folks are targeted. Just because this is one of the things that I think that is a little bit more interesting for me when the attack of a law firm is much broader, because there's everybody's out there on the web and LinkedIn. I'm an attorney at this law firm, and these are the things that I'm doing, and they're really pushing the marketing to try to get these billable hours in for these attorneys, and drive business. And by doing that, you're also kind of putting yourself out there, raising your hand, saying, hey, I'm the guy you should send this fake invoice to, or something like that. So we see it all across every department, but I would say that we get a lot of the like invoice based attacks and fake law firm submitting links and things like that for that it comes in a lot to our partners and our senior partners.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Thanks. What if you had like some advice for other fellow law firm IT departments, and they were taking a look at what you guys are doing and comparing it to what they're doing, and every law firm has to kind of do that risk reward and really make a decision on what is the best course of action for them. Like, what are you seeing in the industry in general that you're like, man, law firms, a lot of them are missing this. There's a miss here, or this is a big concern. This is, if I were to walk into a new law firm, this is the 1, 2, 3 things I want to look at right out of the gate, just to kind of figure out what's going on.
I mean, I think the biggest thing, that I've seen between where here at Tyson Menez and other firms that I've worked with, is that the multi-layered. You got to have the multi-layered approach, because there's attorneys. Again, they're just, I think in general, very fast paced, and they want to have the least path of resistance to get things done, which totally makes sense. But having the MFA up front, then having Sentinel look at your Azure instance, and then ultimately if something does get through, you want to make sure that you're looking at that when and if it does come through, with Proofpoint, Windows Defender, whatever it is. Just having that multi-layered approach, I think, is the biggest piece of advice that I could give, because it's, hey, we want to have anti-spam, or it's just, then we want to have 2FA, or if we have like 1 or 2 of these things, we're going to be safe. I mean, there's as many layers as of protection as we have, even with the best in class tools. I mean, some stuff just gets through, and you got to make sure that that every notification you get, like, you don't want to get notification fatigue, because that was another thing too, is that make sure your tools are configured correctly, because there's so many times that things come through and you're kind of like, oh, well, yeah, well, that does that all the time, so I'm not going to worry about that anymore. It's like, well, then you kind of turn a blind eye to it. When you're not getting, proper or actionable notifications, that's when things kind of slip through the cracks. And we want to make sure that, anything that comes through, should be a red flag. And if it's not, then you gotta fix it, and then and figure out how to make those notifications important. So
Right. Yeah, so that's good. What is so you kind of mentioned that notification fatigue. How important is 24/7 monitoring in that equation with those notifications and like
yeah,
that that strategy?
yeah, it's for us, it's huge, right? Because as we work with a hybrid kind of staffing model, we have our on-site IT folks, but we have we don't staff our support desk 24/7, right? So we need eyes and hands to be able to help us out with stuff across the board. So that the 24/7 SOC that we have been working with through Fit's been amazing. It's
Yeah.
we realize that with our certain thresholds, is if it's something that can wait till the morning, it can wait, and if they need to wake me up, they're going to wake me up, and we're going to find out what the issue is. I've used 24/7 SOC services in like the last 3 companies that I've been a part of, and it's been worth every single penny that we've paid for it. So I can't say enough. Making sure that you have that type of coverage, and if you can't have it on your team individually, find a partner that you trust and run with them.
Yeah. No, that's great. And thanks for that endorsement. One of the things that we've seen and that we like with the relationship and that we've always wanted to emulate, and this is important with any vendor, especially on the cyber side, is having the regular review type meetings to go over the incidents and kind of then shape the alerting. And because the analysts have to get to know the environment. If they don't get to know the environment, they're gonna just have to punt and ask a lot of clarification questions. So the more they can get to know the environment, the better the value for the internal team, because then they're taking load off of them instead of putting more on. So
Yeah.
that's huge. You mentioned what are some of the communications that are happening, because attackers, they're focusing so hard on law firms because they seem to have, the lawyer is in the one of the most trusted positions that any organization is working with. They have all the maybe not all the data, but they have massive amount of sensitive data, especially when it comes to a lawsuit or a client or litigation, whatever it might be. What is the data that the criminals really want to get to? And what are some of the ways that they've successfully been doing that at other law firms and where we're seeing these data breaches?
Yeah. So from the last couple of years, what we see is just more along the lines of them of an attacker trying to get an invoice paid for something, or acting as a law firm to try to get perhaps some PII on either our client or even the client on the other side, right? Because we've actually seen other law firms where they get information, and then we'll get an email saying, hey, and they're emulating that law firm with that client's name, with the case number and everything else. They're trying to get some information there. So really it's PII. And then also, just submitting false invoices and hoping people just kind of don't look at it and pay it and forget about it. Those are the two, I would say, main things that we see. But, again, we've had trying to get, credentials, trying to find out who's who within the organization, right, to try to make those things happen.
Yeah.
So those are the largest things that we see.
Yeah, one of the really interesting ones that I got to see, and I mean, these criminals were so smart. There was basically a class action lawsuit that had come to an end, and it was time for settlement payment. And the criminals, there was three parties involved, right? And one of the parties was our was a customer we were working with, and the two other parties we were not. And they got an email from the opposing counsel, and the domain was like, everything was perfect except like one I and O got swapped on the name in the domain. So they had purchased the domain legit, registered it on Gmail, because G Suite, like when it comes out of Gmail, just the amount of emails coming out of Gmail, it usually will pass most spam filters if if it's like seems like legit communication. And then they had copied the entire thread that goes back from however long they were talking to the accounting departments and wiring settlement money and so on, and they then provided instructions to whatever bank account the criminal wanted. So they had been listening to that conversation, and I'm assuming, I don't know exactly how they knew about the lawsuit, probably because in California a lot of those it's public information. So they were in that conversation. They had breached a law firm, not one we were working with, but it was one of the parties, and they were in Chicago. And so it's kind of an interesting conversation, because then the IT director of the law firm had to call this party and be like, hey, yeah, you guys have called the other IT guys, you guys have a criminal in your system, there's a data breach. And they're like, no, we're good. Like, no, you're not,
Yeah.
So that was pretty interesting to kind of see. But the understanding that these are not like low-level criminals, the amount of brain power and I hate to use the word professionalism, but they kind of know what they're doing.
Yeah. And that's that's the downside to being out there and trying to drum up more business, and then putting out all your wins and your victories right out on LinkedIn and social media and all that stuff, because somebody's watching, right? Somebody's always watching, and they're kind of formulating what their next plan is going to be. Oh, these guys do a lot of work in this particular sector, whether it's personal injury, whether it's workman's comp, or whatever it is. I mean, when you start putting stuff out there saying these are the large victories that we had, somebody's going to use that to their advantage. So we always got to be on our mindful of that. And obviously if something comes to us as a class action, obviously we know right off the bat, because we don't deal with stuff like that, right? But the stuff that we do have out there that we're our founder, one of our founders, Bob Tyson, he's got a couple of books out there on nuclear verdicts, right? So I mean, there's a plethora of information out there that people can use to try to use against you, and we just got to be mindful of that.
Very cool, man. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on here and kind of sharing your guys' strategy and answering some questions for people. If anybody has any last questions, throw them in the chat. We would love to put that in there. Oh, question, Mike Ray, are you using XDR?
We are not using X currently.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Is that tell us a little bit about what you are using. Do you like the product? Do you not like it? What are you kind of using right now?
Yeah, I mean, just mainly because we're living in most of the Microsoft world currently. We have our technology stack is generally everything that we integrate at the Azure level. So we use Microsoft Secure Gateway all the way, and then we have Microsoft Sentinel as a piece as well, all the way down to Windows Defender for endpoints and for our anti-spam as well. So outside of that, we really don't have a lot of other need for any other layers in there. We use Meraki at Edge on our branch offices and things like that. So that, I mean, it's been very kind of standardized with some of those
Yeah.
those big vendors, but yeah, we don't really have the need for any additional layers with the way we're set up today.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the nice thing about Sentinel, like if an analyst is doing an investigation, Sentinel, and if you're also using the endpoint, the Microsoft endpoint agent, you can then automate a lot of tasks. Has that saved? Do you find that saves your team time when, like, when that whole workflow lifecycle happens from Sentinel to the endpoint?
Yeah, it's cohesive, and the fact
Yeah,
that we can actually kick out, kind of consolidated reports, from the single pane of glass, right, within Azure, has been great. And then the automation piece, it's helped us a lot with some of our conditional access and travel policies and things like that, just to something's amiss immediately, Sentinel catches it before anything else does, and we're able to generate alerts and create tickets in our ticketing system and all that type of good stuff. So it's been a really solid platform. We've been very, very happy with having that layer in there.
yeah, that's awesome. What has your approach been now that you guys are? I remember something I wanted to ask you with the pen test process. So pen test happens. The pen tester finds problems, have the meeting, they present it to you and your team, Jim, and say, hey, here's what we find: critical, medium, low, so on. What is your approach to, where do you go with it from there? What's the importance? How do you prioritize that versus everything else happening? And what is just kind of that approach to test your own environment, like the same way a criminal is going to test it?
Yeah, so when we have, we want to test both, right? We want to test the external. We do our external pen test, our internal pen testing. Then we do our quarterly vulnerability scan within our own environment to make sure that we're up to date with patches and things like that. But when we do get those reports, we do meet with our engineering team. We take a look at them. Is this something that we can handle? Is this something that we have a vendor for one of our systems, that we've actually got them to change the way that they use some weak ciphering and different versions of TLS and things like that, because hey man, we keep popping these things on the vulnerability scan and we can't correct it unless you guys change something on your end. So we actually were kind of at the forefront to help push those guys to really make some changes on their end, because it didn't affect us, it affected all their customers. And I said, well, if we're the only ones telling you this, then there's some other IT departments out there that need some work to get to start doing some of this stuff. But the fact that we were able to kind of raise that up and say, hey, look, at some point you're going to get another client that's going to require this, or all your clients should be requiring this from you. That's been really, really helpful. And the fact that everything that we have on those, like I said, is actionable is great, because then as things change quarter to quarter and other vulnerabilities are found, we want to make sure that we're staying on top of those. So it's been a great process to just kind of review those with our cybersecurity vendor is Fit. So we've been reviewing those on a regular basis and making decent changes based on those recommendations. And when we moved on from vulnerability scan to penetration testing this year, the one thing I can say without a shadow of a doubt is that it was great to watch our Sentinel system actually pick up the attempts that were trying to come in from the inside and outside.
That's awesome.
We're actually
testing your own defense. Your blue team and red team are testing each other.
Exactly. And we're able to see all that stuff, making its way through, or the attempts that are coming through. So, it's been a great jump in our security posture with that platform.
Awesome, man. Great work. Thanks for sharing everything you've been doing. I know that's you guys are a model for a lot of other law firms that are kind of looking at the growth and the rapid expansion that Tyson has had. It comes with big challenges. You've been doing a lot, making a lot of things that happen over there. So thanks for being a guest, Jim. We appreciate you, man. And I think it was just kind of inspirational seeing what you're doing and being able to model after that. So thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, definitely appreciate it. Everybody stay safe out there and keep your guard up and do your vulnerability scans and do your penetration testing, because that's going to tell you more than anything else where you're at. So
awesome, man. Let's
yeah.
go. All right, everybody, all the guests, thank you so much for joining. We appreciate you. Tune in again. We're going to have another very cool one coming up a couple weeks. Drop us a message if you have any special requests that we could also bring, or topics that we could bring onto the breach report. And we look forward to talking soon. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.